So one of my favorite things about Trapped in a Dating Sim is definitely how they humanize the villainess of the game. Because Angelica is supposed to be this hot-headed, over jealous, over egotistical, noble woman who only has eyes for the prince and wants to make sure that he is safe away from all these commoners, all these bad people, all these just horrible decisions. But in Trapped in a Dating Sim, they gave her an actual personality. They gave her a kind, loving spirit. They gave her an idea of who she is. We have seen more personality from her than we have in many other animes. When it comes down to Angelica, she has this really, cunning personality. She's supposed to be this way in public, so she acts this way in public. She's supposed to be this way in private, so she acts this way in private. She is a noble woman at the end of the day, which means that the matriarchy works in her favor. And on top of that, she is was engaged to the prince. I think in Trapped in a Dating Sim, when Leon discovers Luxion's main body for the first time, when he goes on this adventure to pretty much stop Zola from selling him off to this 50-year-old hag, is absolutely hilarious. Because at one point, Luxion was going to kill Leon. And if it wasn't for the fact that Leon knew how to speak Japanese, Luxion was going to self-destruct. From Leon pretty much speaking a phrase in Japanese, pretty much saying, my soul is purely Japanese, 2 cups of rice and a thing of miso soup, pretty much allowed Luxion to stay curious and ended up looking over Leon's genes, seeing that he was part of what they called the old humans. The old humans referring to, I imagine, players from Japan, where the new humans are these reincarnated people who are not the same as Japanese residents. While they are still within this shitty Atomo game, they are still trying to discover out what these new and old humans are coming from, and it becomes pretty fucking interesting. Read this fucking book. It's interesting, bro. Look, I just wanted to be known. Fuck this hag. Zola from Trapped in a Dating Sim is probably one of the worst partners that ever fucking existed in the world. All she cares about is her status, her money, and how she can continue making money off of the back-breaking labor of other people. She was willing to sell off Leon to a 50-year-old hag that pretty much wanted to sell him off into the military, let him die, and then collect the money that the military gives you for having someone in your family die within combat. This would have awarded Zola riches, along with awarding the person that she sold Leon off to riches, and many other things, which is why I thought that Leon challenging Zola was probably one of the best things ever within the early seasons of the manga and the anime. Because watching her go from shit-eating grin to all that money is mine to him saying, no the fuck it's not, was probably the best experience. And Zola, I hope you get hit by a spaceship or an airship or whatever the fuck they call it in this world. If you're not married by the age of 20 as a man, you are considered worthless. That's what they think within Trapped in a Dating Sim's world. Because the matriarchy pretty much prioritizes healthy young men instead of healthy young women. And the idea within this show is that men are supposed to pretty much give their lives up for women, give up their property, give up their land, give up everything, all for the search of being able to find a partner. And if you're a noble man who's not able to be married by the age of 20, you are absolutely considered worthless and a low product. Which brings on the anxiety from these noble men to pretty much go to the academy and try to find someone on their level, if not a little higher than their level, to bring pride and honor to their noble lands. But because of this, Leon is trying to find a way out of it so that he doesn't have to sit in the same kind of repeating cycle that everyone else is. Honestly, I like this trope within Trapped in a Dating Sim because it takes that whole women are useless after the age of 20 trope that we have in societal standards and puts it on the men. Also, sorry for not posting for the past couple days. I have the stomach flu and I still have ongoing vertigo going right now. So like everything is spinning for me. I think one of my favorite interactions with Zola is definitely when she gets humbled by Angelica, because she barges within the Barony's house, starts pretty much demanding all types of things because of Leon's behavior within the academy, and pretty much knocking down some nobles all the way down to where they actually should be, which is Barony's. During this time, Angelica pretty much steps in, and Zola's like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Da 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 da, and starts berating Angelica, calling her a little girl. And that's when the barony has to step in before she makes a huge mistake by upsetting a duke's daughter. And once the baron pretty much starts explaining himself, she ends up sitting down with Angelica and is like pretty much now apologetic. She's trying to like curry favor. She's trying everything to just pretty much be on Angelica's good side. And Angelica's like, "You're never home. What is Rutrid doing? What are you doing? How is all this happening? Why are you never in your territory?" And Zola makes excuse after excuse after excuse, and then pretty much dips the next day. Trapped in a Dating Sim, I feel like the prince and his friends really deserve that ass kicking from Leon. Not only because they looked down on him for being of a lower noble status, but because they also needed a reality check. If all of them are going to run the country in the future, they need to understand their roles and how to get better within the fighting realm, especially as knights. Prince Julius definitely needed a kick in the ass because he was letting someone of a Viscount rank pretty much destroy the kingdom. If he didn't get his ass kicked at that very moment, he would have definitely destroyed the kingdom moving forward and would have caused mass calamity, because he was already pretty much putting a duke's daughter in a very bad situation, and one of the biggest pretty much producers of money for the king's crown, the Duke Redclaw, but he was throwing it all away for a Viscount. A Viscount, bro. And why? Because she knew his favorite dish. What a fucking sweetheart, I guess. Trapped in a Dating Sim, I do love Angie and Olivia's relationship, that they ended up blooming together through their help of Leon. Because within the game, she is supposed to be the villainess and she is supposed to be the heroine. But within the world of Trapped in a Dating Sim, they are besties, both fighting and wanting for the hand of Leon within marriage. But it becomes even greater when we realize that they also protect each other. Olivia is still considered a scholarship student, and she is still considered a commoner. And up until that commoner status ends up leaving her, she is always going to have trouble dealing with people who are going to look down on her for her status within the academy. That's where Olivia and Leon step in. They are now able to sway the people who are going to be rude to them to pretty much move away or move past, so that they can end up having a good time, and Olivia can end up learning about nobility, her status, and how things work within the world outside of just being bullied the entire time for her commoner status. Aries from Trapped in a Dating Sim is the perfect example of a lady turned Yaru. After Jill ended up breaking off their proposal, she ended up pretty much surrounding herself with men and dressing different. She went from a lady of a court to a Yaru. But with this brought hatred and scorn from Clarice, to the point where she actually tried to physically injure Jill in one of the school events, specifically the bike race. She ended up pretty much getting all the upperclassmen within the bike race to pretty much target Jill and break his arm. But it wasn't enough for Clarice. Clarice wanted Jill to suffer. If it wasn't for the advice of Angie, she would have still continued on. But Angie's advice wasn't really what mattered. It was Angie's position. It also took the former Prince Julius to make Clarice understand that if she continues to target Jill, she would bring down the iron of pretty much everyone within Jilt's alliance. No matter if he's disinherited or not, that is still someone's kid. Clarice said, "Fucking bring it. This isn't over because of all the things that you've done. You've made me a laughingstock in this school, and you've made people laugh at me behind my back. How can I ever forgive a man like that, especially in these events? So if you continue pushing yourself out in these events, I will continue to try to hurt you." In Trapped in a Dating Sim, many people within the academy would consider Leon a bad guy, mainly because of all the underhanded tactics in which he uses to pretty much implement his schemes to pretty much get rich quick. The problem is if people never put Leon in these situations, he would have never been put there to be the villain. Bree's chokehold on the prince and his friends definitely put a damper on the entire situation, especially since she was going the reverse harem route from the game, where basically she got to take on each and every one of the main people within the prince's party. But at the end of the day, whenever Leon does anything, he does it out of goodwill. Like when he ended up volunteering to help Angie, he ended up doing that out of goodwill because the whole thing within the story was supposed to be, at that point, it was supposed to be Olivia. So he understood that the game was changing and that Angie would be humiliated, and he wanted to take his chance to get his pound of flesh from the prince and his friends. But let's talk about when Leon did something good for Clarice. Basically, Clarice has been trying her hardest to get a hold of Jilk, and Jilk has pretty much been denying her left and right. And when Leon ends up winning the bike race for the first years, Jilk agrees to do one task for him. Leon says, explain to her why. And Jilk admits that he fell in love with another woman and that he didn't feel right lying to Clarice's face the more and more that the time went on. Let's talk about Clara Faux Wayne, or as I like to call her, Stephanie Offrey's pet from Trapped in a Dating Sim. In Volume 2, Clara pretty much all she wants to do is please the mistress Offrey. She knows all about Offrey's illegal activities that she's done within the school grounds and all of what the Offreys have done off of the school grounds. Because of her close relationship through family ties, she tries to stay on the mistress's good side. The problem with that, though, is that the mistress Offrey was offered to Brad, and Brad ended up cutting off the engagement. So she ended up trying to eliminate Brad, Leon, Olivia, and get back at Angie all in one go. The problem with that is she attacked a bunch of high-ranking nobility trying to use air pirates to pretty much do her bidding. She was hoping that the air pirates would pretty much take everyone out and that Olivia would basically become a slave to them. And it was all through Clara's pretty much work that got them in this situation, because she introduced herself as a polite young lady who introduced herself to Olivia. She tried to get into Leon Barfort's good graces by being there with Olivia, and then moved forward within the story to try to pretty much position herself. Once she met Leon, her true colors showed, and she pretty much treated Olivia like scum. Leon's own pessimistic view to the world around him is what really stops him from getting a good life within the early moments of being in this world. Outside of Zola, when he enters the academy, he has a real good chance to become popular, but instead he considers himself a background character, which places him in a pessimistic view, because then he places himself in a background character role. While yes, within the game itself, he would be a background character, it seems that this world doesn't work like the game. That's the one thing he's not getting. His actions have direct consequences to the world. It's not like in game where your actions of a background character does not show a reflection of the world. So everything he does gets met with a consequence or a positive outcome. When he beats the prince, he has a possibility of being executed. When he defends off the pirates, he has a possibility of being promoted. When he helps Clarice, he has a possibility of being promoted. All these things that pretty much end up happening to Leon, he doesn't understand that it's going to negatively affect him if he doesn't want to increase his rank, and it's going to negatively affect him if he doesn't want to continue on the route of becoming more than just someone who can live out their life in the countryside. The more he pushes to push the game in the right direction, the more he's going to end up pushing the game in the wrong direction. So with Leon passing all his accomplishments off to the main protagonist's party, actually ends up helping him more than hindering him, like he thinks it's going to do. He thinks it's going to stop him from getting promotions. So in Trapped in a Dating Sim, when Leon makes an accomplishment and he's helped by one of the main protagonist's party members, he ends up passing that accomplishment on to them. Why? Because he doesn't really want the achievements that come with it, but it ends up helping him in the long run because he's made enemies of each and every one of their houses because they had to disinherit their only heir. And Angie explains it the best because when it came to a person like Brad, who was a member of the Sword Saint's household, he made a huge enemy of the Sword Saint, the Arc Light house. So by passing that accomplishment on to Brad, he ends up allowing Brad to take on the ability to take responsibility for it, making the Arclight house be able to reinstate his inheritance and reinstate him as an heir, along with bringing honor back to their house. Bro, I swear when people say that Americans read on a 5th grade reading level, I believe it after comments like this. In reference, we're talking about what happened to Leon, the main character of Trapped in a Dating Sim, when he was still in Japan and his mother ended up finding yaoi in his room because his little sister would end up leaving it in his room, and then used it as a blackmail tool to get him to play an Otome game. Let's use some cognitive thinking here. Leon is a person who has a good relationship with his parents and doesn't want to cause a rift between them. 2, he didn't know that the smut was originally within his room, so he can't just throw it away because you can't just know that something's in your room. 2, he can't ban his sister from coming over and visiting because that causes a rift between him and his parents. 3, he can't just assume that every time she comes over that she is going to drop yaoi within his room, because then he would have to constantly check his house every time she comes over. And anyone who is smart enough or petty enough is just going to go, okay, I'm not going to bring it for like 3 months, and then I'm going to bring a fuck ton on the 4th month. Because that brings down people's senses, and they no longer suspect you of doing heinous stuff. So she just waits out 4 months. She then drops 60 books. Your mom goes over there, cleans it, and now you have 60 yaoi books in your room versus the original 3 that she left. Now your mom is accusing you of being gay again, but on a way higher level. I think one of the most important things within Trapped in a Dating Sim is how Olivia, Angie, and Leon interact with each other. Because a lot of the times, Leon is just trying to progress the game and trying to make sure that everything follows suit. But he doesn't understand that the game is going to differ because there are outside forces interfering with the canonical events. Angie is trying to make sure that Leon holds himself together as a noble and make sure he doesn't make missteps within the noble society that is eventually going to end up hurting him, especially after he ended up sticking his neck out for her. Olivia expresses her wants and desires to be with Leon and to be with Angie and have this type of friendship that they currently have, but also expresses to Leon that she wants more from him. And the more that they end up going down these paths, the more that they end up breaking apart and having these very big arguments. Especially with the fact that Leon is really just trying to push Olivia and Angie to their proper routes within the game. I think one of my favorite parts within Trapped in a Dating Sim is when Leon ends up saving Greg because his suit is about to explode with him in it. So the events went like this. Jill, Brad, Julius, Greg, and Chris all pretty much went together and got this suit of armor. They worked night and day on, and then they got a professional craftsman to pretty much polish it off. The problem is that this professional craftsman was a scammer, and he didn't really polish it off. He put a bunch of dangerous components together, which would eventually, once you run the suit, make it explode. The entourage ended up challenging Leon to a duel in which Leon was originally just going to lose in. But then Luxion expresses to Leon that he needs to tell Greg to get out of his suit or it is going to pretty much vaporize him. Leon tries to express this to the referee, Greg, and pretty much everyone around him, but they all pretty much go, oh, you're just making this shit up. There's nothing serious about it, blase, blase. There's nothing that really needs to be going on. They think that Leon is just blowing smoke out of his ass because he is currently losing. Eventually, he has to disable the suit and disable Greg from the suit so that when the suit ended up eventually imploding, that Greg didn't get vaporized. So after the Prince of Paladin attack, we start seeing that Leon is getting more popular with the women around him, mainly Clarice and Deidre. They both are interested within his island, and not only interested within his island, but are interested in him. They see him as an honorable prospect that eventually one day is going to elevate the kingdom, and that they feel like they can get a ride on that train. And the more that they end up getting on that ride, the more Angie now has to go, I might need to vet the people that are going to be around him, especially since he is now going to have a status of Viscount instead of just Baron. And Angie goes, we need to pretty much start regulating all these people, because if not, Leon is eventually going to get in with someone who is going to be against the Redclave household, and that is not going to be a good look for anybody. On top of that, Angie also has feelings for Leon himself, so she doesn't really want to get involved, but she also feels like she has to for political reasons. She wants to get involved because she wants to be able to connect with Leon and get popular with Leon. Everything that the anime left out about Luxion and Leon when they first met. When Luxion and Leon ended up first meeting, yes, they ended up having that fight. But during the fight, Luxion pretty much discovers that Leon's part of the old humans, and the old humans are what Luxion was trying to serve. He wanted to destroy the new humans, which is why he was willing to kill Leon. But because Leon ended up having some of the old human race in him, Luxion agreed to take him on as master. But he did not do that so easily. When Leon tried to take control or ownership of the ship, Luxion threatened to self-destruct. It wasn't until Leon spoke a little bit of Japanese that Luxion was like, okay, you can be my master. Also, Luxion may be a raging racist, because the sword that Leon ends up getting made by Luxion is a katana, because Luxion says, because you are Japanese, I felt that a katana would best suit you. In the anime, what they gave Leon was a normal knight sword, not a katana at all. Go to episode 2 where they're doing the dungeon exploration, and he says that Luxion made me this sword. That same thing happened in the light novel, but he then goes back and gets explained that Luxion made him a katana, not a knight sword. In the Bartfort household, Jenna ended up benefiting the most when it came to Leon discovering the dungeon, clearing it, going and discovering a new floating island, and discovering Luxion, and obtaining the rank that he did obtain. Because she tries to flaunt the rank over lower nobility so that she can push her way into other people's arms. Like, there's a story of her trying to get with a Viscount, and she tried to flaunt Leon's rank over the person because she was of a baronetcy. And Leon basically said, no, that's not going to happen. Also, so that she could have a servant going into the academy, Leon ended up buying Meowler, her demi-human slave. And so that she could continue going on, she does use it the way that other noble women use Meowler, which is basically he's a vibrator. The problem with Jenna is that she tries to flaunt her brother's rank like it's her own house rank, but because Leon is now considered an independent vassal, he no longer pretty much holds the same title as Baronessy Bartfort, which means that Jenna doesn't hold the same rank as Leon because she is considered a lower rank than him. But all girls who go to the academy are always in the higher education classes. Let's talk about servants or slaves within Trapped in a Dating Sim. These quote-unquote servants/slaves are actually lovers. Lower nobility end up buying servants to pretty much please their feminine needs. Within the whole Fort Kingdom, it is considered taboo for a male to have a servant/slave because it speaks badly upon his nobility and his rank. But for women, it only looks bad when you are an earl or higher to have a servant/slave. Most women end up buying demi-humans because it's said that demi-humans and humans cannot procreate together. They cannot have babies. But that's technically a lie, because our boy right here, Kyle, he's a half-elf. If his secret gets out that humans and elves can procreate, that elves feel that within the market they are not going to be the most profitable demi-human being paid for, which is currently the case because all elves are considered beautiful by human standards. Things the Trapped in a Dating Sim anime ended up leaving out. And we're going to talk about Zola trying to take the treasure from Leon that he found in the dungeon. So when Leon returns to pretty much buy his freedom back, Zola pretty much demands the keys to the airship, all the gold, and pretty much any treasures that Leon found along the way. Except in the country of Holfort, they were founded on adventurers, and they live by kind of a credence and a code, if you may. Anything you find is yours. They cannot be taken by your family or their estate, and they cannot be taken by the government. Now, Zola thinks that because Leon is eventually going to give all this stuff up to the baronet, that he is going to end up like just passing all this stuff off onto him, which then allows her to take it anyways. But Leon then drops the news that he has now been appointed his own independent knight, which means that no longer does Leon fall under the baronet or his estate, and that makes him where he doesn't have to give anything to the baronet that he doesn't want to unless it's a gracious donation. And for anything that Leon ends up donating, as long as he does not give the money to the baronet and he pays for it, like upgraded docks or buying a new mansion or anything like that, Zola cannot put her hands on the money. So Leon never really has to work for money, and any money that he has, he doesn't even have to go out there and do any type of work for. Because Luxion can transform other minerals and items into gold and platinum and copper, so that Leon could live a fortune on an island secluded and just use Luxion to pay his taxes to the government. This is how Leon ended up getting 15,000 platinum coins to bet on himself against Prince Julius and his crew, is that he got Luxion to make the platinum coins for him. And no, there's no official currency within the whole Fort Kingdom. They don't have like a dollar amount or a yen or anything. They go off of gold, platinum, rubies, stuff like that. So you can just pay with a gold bar if you wanted to. So there's no way for the whole Fort Kingdom to pretty much guarantee that Leon is making counterfeit money, because he is sending direct minerals and gold instead of dollars and whole fort dollars. And as long as Leon continues this way, he never had to lift a finger a day in his life, and he could have lived a quiet life on the countryside if he didn't decide to involve himself. So Leon was only able to find Luxion because of a father's love. His father, the baronet, did not want to send Leon off to marry that horrendous, ugly woman, because he knew that his son would just go and die in combat, because that woman has a tendency of putting all the people that she marries onto the front line for them to die. So he ended up pretty much pulling all the money that he could together to get Leon an airship, some bullets, and some grenades, which then allowed Leon to move forward and end up collecting Luxion. From there, he was then able to take that back and rub it in Zola's face. If it wasn't for the baronetcy's love for his child and the baronetcy's loathe and hatred towards Zola, Leon would have never actually found Luxion and would have died immediately within the early moments of the show. So for everyone who loves Leon, thank Baronet Bartfort, because if not, we wouldn't have had a moment in which Leon could have actually progressed within the show and found Luxion. Let's actually talk about Nyx and Leon's position before Leon ended up joining the academy. Now, normally these kids would be treated like normal, everyday people, except by their own family, which can pawn them off and pretty much upgrade their social status by sending their child to marry someone within a higher status class. The problem with that is, if they were to do that to a first or a second child, just send them off to get married and die in war, their political standing could be looked down upon, because then they see that they are just using children as a breeding factory for their social standing. That's why Nyx wasn't married off to the girl that Zola tried to push onto Leon, the person who's had over 50 husbands, and they all went to war and they all died at war. The reason that Zola was trying to pawn Leon off is because of the Army's pension. The Army's pension pretty much says that if a member of your family was to die at war, you would be honored and then you would receive a handsome sum. This handsome sum is pretty much like $1 million in our world. Of course, Zola would never use her own kids for this, because that wouldn't push her anywhere and she would have no one to run her estate later. The thing is, Leon and Nyx are not her kids. They are the kids of a mistress. So them being pushed into these marriages is going to benefit Zola, because then one of her kids can inherit the baronetcy and then one of her kids can inherit her estate. Bro, people be forgetting that Leon has elite ball knowledge all the time. For example, when him and Olivia are pretty much going through their first exploration during episode 2, in the light novel, he explains where treasure chests come from and how they're an amalgamation of mana pretty much spawned in, and that's where all the treasure and the treasure chests come from within the dungeon. This piques Olivia's interest because nothing about that is written within their textbooks at school. So she's like, oh, so the textbooks don't mention any of that. How'd you learn about that? Leon, in Leon fashion, pretty much makes up some bullshit lie about when he was discovering the dungeon that he ended up noticing things and that he ended up talking to more experienced adventurers, and this was their explanation towards it. So Olivia's like, so the textbooks are wrong, and Leon's like, they're not necessarily wrong, but you should take everything that they say with a grain of salt, because not everything that they have is up-to-date knowledge at this moment. So they're not wrong, but they're not right. So let's actually talk about how we find out that Holford Academy does not go by their own rulings and standards very early in the anime. Holford Academy is where nobles are supposed to be able to go, and they leave their nobility at the door, and they're not able to use their nobility to pretty much flaunt over others. Yeah, that works when you're someone who has higher ranking or high power and that you are not below or beneath anybody. Because even the staff will look down on you if you are of lower nobility and someone of higher nobility tells them to look down on you. You don't even need to see it from Stephanie Offrey's position, because within the light novel, they show us pretty early. Leon checks in to get his room. That's when we start seeing how unfair they treat nobility here. Leon checks in and they pretty much welcome him, give him the pretty much the standard run-of-the-mill introduction and tell him where his room is. But quickly after that, someone of a higher nobility standing like Clarice ends up coming in and they give them the whole 9 yards. The staff jumps up and immediately takes that person's bag to the room. Holford Academy is where you're supposed to leave your nobility at the door. And that's what Julius was trying to pretty much do, but due to the fact that Holford Academy only allows people of higher noble standing to leave their nobility at the door, it doesn't work. Bro, I 100% agree. I don't think that Julius really understood anything, but I also see where he's coming from. Julius's own wants and desires come from the fact that he doesn't have to deal with the shitty lower nobility that only look for a man due to financial standing. Most of the women that him and his friends are dukes, earls, and all of that don't have to deal with, because they have the ability to marry who they want and to find a partner out of love. They don't have to sit there and argue during a tea party to pretty much get and find a good partner. They don't have to do this. They are able to see in a woman that they are attracted to and that they find enjoyable to be around, and then take that person on as a wife, knowing that 1, they won't need a slave servant or lover. 2, if they no longer find this person appealing later, that they can take on a mistress. Or 3, that they're the crown prince and that anything can pretty much fall into their lap because of their positions. They never have to deal with shitty nobility because these problems don't happen. He speaks from a place of privilege, not from a place of knowing and understanding. His problems aren't the problems of every man within that academy, and I think that that's really what makes Julius stand sad. His problems lay in the fact that he wants someone who sees him as more than just the crown prince and sees him more than just his status. Now, that's completely understandable, especially for someone who's going to be running the country in the future, but he's so easily deceived by that ideology that he was able to take on anyone just because they felt like it. So some of the things that the Trapped in the Dating Sim anime left out was kind of pointless to leave out, because it could have definitely made the story a lot better. Like, let's talk about Leon's exploration in episode 2 with Olivia. Sending people in by teams, and these teams consisted of a select number of people. And Prince Julius was pretty much assigned the most protected group. Of course, they had his entourage of 4 others. Then they had Angie, Marie, Olivia, and Leon all go in there. From there, they ended up pretty much sending Olivia and Leon to go and scout ahead, because the entire point of this mission was to collect mithril shards from within inside this dungeon, but they couldn't go past the 5th level. This is where the idea that they were looking down on Leon starts, because during this very fucking moment, they pretty much send Leon in and then quickly rush to him to help him after he tries to save Olivia from being bit by one of the monkeys within the dungeon. This is also where we showcase Olivia and Angie for the first time, because Angie is seen as a caring, loving girlfriend who's trying to make sure that the prince is protected, but she's too overprotective, not allowing the prince to go out and do his own things, while Olivia is trying to pretty much use her healing magic to get rid of the wound on Leon's arm. This pretty much showcases both of their roles within the story. Essentially is what sends the Pretty Brigade into their spiral against Angie. Because Julius wants to feel like his own person and not just the crown prince of the whole Fort Kingdom. So y'all should have actually started learning about Marie's past within episode like 2 or 3. Let's get into it. The scene after she ends up making out with that dude in the library, she starts walking down the hallway pretty much lonely and thinking about her former life and how it started going to hell after her big brother died. Now, this is the point where we start learning a little bit about her, because she's like, after coming back from summer vacation, my big brother ended up dying because I made him play an Otome game and he fell down the stairs due to exhaustion. But instead, the anime kept that a secret, pretty much keeping Marie's personality and who she is away from the public view, especially anyone who's an anime only fan. Instead, what they did was introduce the Prince and Jilt and pretty much started making it where she could obtain Kyle. Kyle was supposed to be a slave that was bought for Olivia, but instead they end up buying that slave for Marie, and pretty much buying a slave in this world is the equivalent of everything is going good and y'all are in a relationship. Things the anime left out and trapped in a dating sim. Let's get to it. The first thing is that Angie's knight was actually supposed to be a commoner.
There we go, guys. Alright, now we're going to the next one. Peasant. We're trying to get back out the commoner. We're gonna get...
Leon explains in the light novel that no one steps up to be her knight, and so she ends up going to the countryside and finds a commoner to pretty much take up arms for her. And that pretty much tarnishes her reputation amongst the nobles, making her have to go to the countryside and pretty much marry a backwoods baron. With Leon getting involved, it pretty much changes Angie's trajectory within the story and now pushes that trajectory onto Marie, because Marie now takes up the place of both Angie and Olivia. But because she's taking on both roles, she kind of puts herself into a catastrophe, because now she's being chased by the prince and being admonished by the kingdom because the kingdom doesn't see her fit to be the next queen. Unlike Olivia, who ended up being accepted because she eventually becomes the saint, and the saintly powers within her helps restore a whole Fort Kingdom to its former glory and fight off the principality's ultimate boss, Marie does not have this power, so she can't be accepted in the same way that Olivia is. Y'all ever wonder why Angelica wasn't fazed by the maid uniform she wore in the cafe? Well, that is simple, and it's because she had to actually go through years and years of training within the capital to become the perfect wife. She had to wear a maid uniform and actually do maidly duties around the royal capital so that she could understand the servant's point of view, and that was Queen Maline's design.
And why aren't you in uniform?
This was pretty much to groom her into the perfect queen. She was supposed to be someone who upheld royal standards while also thinking of the commoner's expense.
You're a groomer?
As we've learned from Carla and Stephanie, Angie didn't look at commoners in the best light. And when she ended up meeting Olivia, it actually started changing her ideas on what a commoner is.
Brother,
But all of this was pretty much helping her become the greatest queen that Queen Maline thought was going to run the country. The reason that Angie was so comfortable within this maid dress is because she spent years already in a maid dress due to Queen Maline. How did Leon fix Jenna's problem, which was basically pissing off a Viscount? Let's talk about it. Jenna is Leon's little sister in this world, and pretty much what she's trying to do is find a man that can financially support her so that she can basically be another Zola who pretty much lords the money over the husband. The problem is it doesn't matter for Jenna, whether it's by hook or by crook, she's going to try to find a way to get a man that's pretty much of noble status that has a lot of money. Which is why when she discovered that a Viscount ended up having a mithril mine discovered on his island, she pretty much jumped towards that dude and tried to find the closest way into his pockets. She even went as far as backdooring her best friend, who was already talking to this man before the mithril mine was actually discovered on his property. So after Leon's fight with the pirates, to pretty much reconcile with this Viscount because of all the troubles that his little sister ended up giving him, he ended up giving away all the pirate slaves to that Viscount to pretty much work in their mines. So they went from a badass pirate gang to coal miners, basically. The Viscount also told Leon that he never intended to proceed with his sister or her friend because he already found someone that he gave himself up to. What does Luxion think of Whole Fort Kingdom? Let's go ahead and get into it. Luxion does not give a fuck about those new humans. If he wanted to actually deal with those new humans, he would have done it. But he does not give a fuck. If one of them was to oppose Leon in the most slightest inconvenience, and Leon gave the order for Luxion to pretty much destroy Whole Fort Kingdom, he would fucking do it in a heartbeat.
Make it happen! Destroy us all! 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 Destroy us all!
The only reason that Luxion stays around as much as he does is because Leon likes Whole Fort Kingdom. And because Leon is his master, he is going to continue to follow his master's orders. So while Luxion doesn't like Whole Fort Kingdom, he does have a soft spot for people that has been around him. And that pretty much includes Angie and Olivia. Both of them have been allowed to meet and interact with Luxion, and he has grown pretty soft towards them. Pretty much guaranteeing that if anything was to oppose them the same way that they would oppose Leon, he would destroy whoever or whatever opposed those two also. So during the battle between Leon and the prince, why did Daniel and Raymond end up voting for Leon? Let's talk about it. During the time in which it was leading up to the duel between Leon and the prince, Raymond and Daniel was pretty much seen trashing Leon's room, and Leon understood because they were just trying to keep their social standing good with everyone else around them, and they didn't want to be caught up in Leon's mess. Leon didn't blame them for that. But right before the duel was about to start and while the betting was still going on, Leon walks over to Daniel and Raymond and says, if you want to make a lot of money because I'm not mad at you about what you did in my room, bet on me because I'm going to win. And with them having faith in their friend, they ended up going and putting a lot of money onto Leon so that they could earn a lot of money back. They risked their fortune on their friend basically just saying, hey bro, I got this. I'm going to win. Just bet on me. Got it? So middle names in Trapped in a Dating Sim actually serve a purpose. Let's go ahead and talk about it. So there are three prominent middle names within Trapped in a Dating Sim: Rafa, Fia, and Foe. So let's talk about everyone that would have the name Rafa within their name. Rafa usually extends to people who are royalty or royalty adjacent, such as blood relatives. So the king, the queen, their children, their cousins, anything that would be directly related to royalty. Then let's talk about what's directly under Rafa, which would be Fia. Fia is pretty much anyone that is a bureaucrat for the capital but do not own their own territories, such as Clarice Fia Otley. But then you have people like Leon, who his family's middle name is Foe. Foe is pretty much people who have their own territories. They're feudal nobles. And while they don't get compensation from the capital does demand them to pay in as taxes. The benefit of being a foe is that you pretty much own your own land and you're self-sustainable. The downside is you don't get a paycheck from the capital and you have to pay taxes higher than anyone else. So in Trapped in a Dating Sim, what was actually in the famous elf ruins? Let's go ahead and talk about it. What was in the famous elf ruins was pretty much a science lab. Nothing like this, more of like beakers, technology, and stuff like that. From the old humans, where they ended up pretty much creating artificial life, aka the elves. They ended up making the elves by extending the lifespan of a normal human, giving them greater mana control, and giving them access to more destructive mana capabilities. Because the old humans didn't have the ability to actually tap into mana resources. So when they were fighting the new humans who had mana resources, they weren't able to actually fight them on an even playing field. By creating elves, they equaled the playing field even though the old humans ended up still losing. But there was one other thing in that facility that pretty much made Luxion crash the fuck out. It was a piece of an old armor. It was a living armor. Pretty much when you touched it and pretty much imbued it onto your body, you could make your body into a suit of armor, but it would eventually kill you because of the mana transportation and all the stuff that's going to be surging through your body. Luxion found this piece of armor absolutely disgusting. disgusting and ended up destroying it because it was such a bad thing that he no longer needed it and doesn't want it to exist in this world. Even putting it on his ship made him physically fucking ill. He started cursing out everything and crashing out the entire time that he knew that armor existed. So, one of the most enjoyable moments in Trapped in a Dating Sim is definitely when the elves get humbled. Let's talk about it. Leon's and the others end up accompanying Marie to go to the Elven Island. They end up finding out that elves feel like they're superior to humans in pretty much every way. Because they're beautiful, they're stunning, and they pretty much find attraction in other ways, pretty much mana capabilities. But going forward, we also find out that the elves are trying to find a way to pretty much revolt against the system. They want to continue making their money through the slave trade, but want to make that money in a better light. So they're using the ancient elves' ruins to pretty much make artificial life. But what they don't know is that they were made in that facility. Elves believe that they are the ones who ended up creating humans, and they ended up creating humans in that facility so that they could end up doing everything that they do, especially since they have a longer life and are able to obtain knowledge faster. It wasn't until Clary, which is the female version of Luxion, comes along and pretty much informs them that they were made by the old humans to pretty much help with the battle against the new humans. The elves couldn't accept it, except that Clary ended up dropping document after document, research file after research file, until they ended up having to accept it. Pretty much spiraling everyone who was in that cavernous void and making them rethink everything that they thought about life, but they still ended up trying to kill Leon and the Saint. So Leon has some crazy get back on Kyle for all the shit that he did to him. Let's go ahead and talk about it. For people who don't know, Kyle's the servant that Julius and the rest of his brigade ended up buying from Marie. Marie eventually ends up finding a bunch of the saint artifacts and ends up becoming the saint of this world. Now, she is a false saint because Olivia is the actual saint of this world, but she is now able to hold her saintly powers and ends up going to an elven kingdom. Through this elven kingdom, we end up meeting Kyle's mom. Wait, who put that there? Who's editing this video? That's wrong. We meet Kyle's mom, and Kyle's mom pretty much drops the secret that Kyle is a half-elf. She was pretty much a servant for a rich nobleman, and he ended up taking advantage of her one day, and then she eventually had Kyle through reproductive means. And you know what that means for Leon? There's a market for this information. So he eventually ends up paying the cost to take on Kyle's mom as a servant for his father's house. Mainly for if at any moment the elves decide to move against him, he can drop the information that the elves can breed with humans, dropping their value on the market. But also, great get back for Kyle. Okay, so I've been dreading making this video, but let's go ahead and talk about the love machine that Angie and Olivia actually had to go through. A lot of people saw this love machine as they have a potential of dating. And I hate to tell you that, but that was never the author's intention. But let's go ahead and talk about it. So the Principality finally launched a full-on invasion of Whole Fort Kingdom. And they're bringing giants, mythic armors, lost relics, pretty much everything that Whole Fort Kingdom can't deal with right now. So Leon remembers a point in the game where you are able to obtain the royal family's ship, and the royal family's ship is able to pretty much stop the war. But there's a condition to get on the royal family ship. They have to step upon these platforms and have an equal or more love connection of 100 plus. Both Angie and Olivia, when on the platform, scored 120 when only they were standing on the platform, causing people to think that they were eventually going to get into a relationship. But this was never the author's intention, because when the light novel 3 ended up coming out, during the end of that chapter, they were always expressing their feelings towards Leon and not towards each other. They never was going to be together, and that was always the author's intention. Love has 3 different ways, and you can be truly in love with these 3 different things: parental love, friendships, and romantic. You can be truly in love with someone who is your best friend. You can be truly in love with someone who is your parent. You can be truly in love with someone who you are romantically involved with. The problem is that people don't want to see the other two types of love that there are. You can have true love with your parent. You can have true love with a friend and never want to be with them, never want to be romantic with them. And in this case, it was quite obvious that Angie and Olivia's love connection was through their friendship and not through the power of actual romantic feelings. So why does Marcus Frampton think that Leon is one of the biggest threats to the Capitol, even though Leon has been helping the Capitol this entire time? Let's talk about it. Marcus Frampton is a noble who's gaining a lot of power within the Capitol. He sees Leon as a threat for many reasons. One, he's part of Duke Redgrave's house. Two, he has the lost item. Three, he just took on a whole armada of the Principality's ships by himself. There's just a lot going on there. So he starts petitioning the government to pretty much see Leon as a threat and to take away his airship, his lost items, all these types of things and try to take over his territory. And the government pretty much denies that because their credence is if you found it, it is yours. And if they end up taking away other people's items that they have found, they go back on what built their country. But that doesn't stop Frampton. Marquise Frampton now has to come up with a plan to make Leon seem like a traitor. So after pretty much politicking in the background, Marcus Frampton finally is able to make Leon look like a traitor within Trapped in a Dating Sim. Want to know how? Let's talk about it. So Marquise Frampton works alongside a lot of people to pretty much plant stuff in Leon's room at the academy, saying that he's conspiring with Thanos' house and pretty much plans on betraying the kingdom, which Marquise Frampton already did. Marquise Frampton ends up giving a lost relic to Hertrude, which is an actual betrayal of the kingdom because Hertrude ends up giving that to the principality and then Vandal ends up putting it on and he's able to access the relic. The relic is a lost item which allows you to transform your whole body into a suit of armor. It is a living suit of armor. So with that, Marquise Frampton ends up sending a bunch of guards to Leon's room to pretty much turn it over, look at it all through and try to figure out what's going on and see if they can prove that he's conspiring with Thanos' house and the principality. They end up finding letters within his room, basically confirming that he is going to be working alongside Thanos' house and with the principalities. Pretty much Hertrude ends up getting a bunch of the slaves to go plant all the stuff within his room. All except Kyle agrees to do this. What happens to Leon on the deck of the Partner on the way to the Elven Kingdom? Let's talk about it. Basically, Hertrude ends up approaching Leon and then giving him an offer he cannot refuse. He says, come join Thanos' house. If you come join us, we will be able to give you whatever you want. Betray the kingdom and we will give you a harem. We will give you all these things that the kingdom can't give you because we are not a matriarch society and we do not uphold the same standards of the kingdom. Mind you, this is all happening on the deck of the Partner with the 5 other love interests, Marie, Angie, Olivia, and Carla all on board. Leon refuses this offer because he doesn't feel right betraying the kingdom, especially after how hard Queen Malene has worked to pretty much be by his side during any incident. While he doesn't agree with all the kingdom's practices, he can say that the kingdom is better than Thanos' house, and he doesn't really want to join Thanos' house because he doesn't see a good point in joining that. On top of that, there's no guarantee safety for Angie or Olivia, and Thanos' house probably has a grudge against him since he's already whooped their ass already. Would you allow your servant to frame your brother for a crime he didn't commit? Well, that's exactly what Jenna Faux Barfort did to Leon. Let's go ahead and talk about it. So if everyone remembers, Leon ended up buying Jenna a servant, a slave. His name is Meowler. And pretty much right before Leon was accused of being a traitor, he starts working with Hertrude. As the Princess of Pallades, a princess from another country that ended up attacking Whole Fort Kingdom. He pretty much wrote some notes that made Leon seem like a traitor, like him and the Principalities was cohorting to pretty much betray Whole Fort Kingdom. Meowler and a bunch of other servants' job was to go and plant these letters in Leon's room. The only servant that refused was Kyle. But this quickly puts Jenna in a bad situation because when this is found out, she is faced with punishment. And if it wasn't for Leon pretty much putting a shit ton of money towards the capital, she would have faced execution. How did Luxion actually stop the nobility from being able to kill Leon? Let's talk about it. So there was a rumor going around the capital that pretty much if you were able to capture Leon's familiar, which is Luxion, that you would be able to control the airship and arrogance. Luxion pretty much quickly says that if you kill my master or try to take me by force, I will just not operate either my ship or my armor for you. This puts Marquis Frampton in a horrible position because his entire goal was to kill off Leon and take control over his airship and armor. With Luxion pretty much saying, you can't do that and I won't obey, it makes it harder for them to push for the execution of Leon in the argument that they can then seize ownership of his airship and armor. And what makes it even harder than that is that the entire time the queen and the king are backing Leon and they don't believe a goddamn thing that Marquis Frampton has said up until that moment. So what happened to Leon when he was accused of being a traitor? Let's go ahead and talk about it. After Marquis Frampton pretty much framed Leon, he tries to pretty much commandeer his airship and his armor, the lost items arrogance, and the partnership. He also pushes heavy for Leon to be executed, but with the backing of Queen Malene, they only throw him within a jail cell, in which many nobilities pretty much go in there and try to bribe him with money, favors, all the sorts, to figure out how the partner in arrogance works. So the nobility end up visiting him in his jail cell, and no matter what, they try to bribe him with money, favors, gifts, offer him a lighter sentence, try to get him out of there. But Leon refuses because he knows that right now the Queen, the King, and Duke Redgrave are all trying to get dirt on Marquis Frampton. And during the time that Leon is locked up, this is when the principalities feels like they have the best shot of attacking the kingdom. So they end up launching an attack, a full frontal assault, the King's Gambit, if you may. Releasing all of their fire force, including the Guardians of the Sky and the Guardians of the Sea, which starts a full frontal assault. But Leon's just laid up in the cell, not really giving a fuck about anything that happens. He's just kind of chilling, and then they pretty much tell him everything that's happening and that there's a war about to start, and they release him. But not before the Idiot Brigade tries to pretty much break him out of prison. The downfall of Zola is probably my favorite thing within Trapped in a Dating Sim. Let's go ahead and start talking about her downfall. When the Principalities finally ends up attacking and Balkis agrees to go to war with Leon, he says to Zola to hand over Rutrud. She basically says, don't get carried away, you countryside trash. Rutrud is the son of my beloved. He doesn't have the blood of yours flowing inside of him. Balkis seems relieved by this, like he knew that Rutrud was not his son and could not be his son. And Rutrud already knew that he wasn't the son of Balkis, which is why he never treated Leon, Nyx, or anything like kin. In fact, at one point, Nyx and Rutrud ended up getting into a fight. This was when they were very young, and Nyx absolutely dog-walked Rutrud because he has no combat abilities. He doesn't do well with magic. He's inexperienced with weapons. The dude is basically a useless pretty boy. I guess when you have a mother like that, there's nothing you can do about it. But because his son is not of Zola's bloodline, he was then able to divorce her and move on with his life also. By the way, that's pretty much how Zola no longer carries the name of Bartfort. So what was the full deal that Marquis Frampton had with Gertrude? Let's talk about it. What Frampton pretty much agreed to is that he would not launch the military strikes if the principalities ended up taking out the border regions. These are feudal lords who are pretty much protecting Holfort's border. Frampton pretty much gave trust into Gertrude to keep her side of the deal, but the whole time Gertrude does not plan on keeping her side of the deal. She plans on a full frontal assault. Frampton also agrees to let her take an artifact from the vault. This is probably the most dangerous part because that artifact's from a lost item. It's a living armor piece. Gertrude pretty much then sends that armor piece as fast as she can all the way to the principality and tries her best to get it there before they start launching their attack. And with a bunch of the border regions gone, there's a little less people that can stand against Marquise Frampton. That's his plan, but his plan doesn't always work the way that he thinks. So what did Leon's father think of Meowler selling out his son? Well, let's just go ahead and say it's not good. Let's talk about it. So Balkis finds out that Leon's been released from prison because Leon ends up showing up at his door and asking him for help in the upcoming battle. Balkis ends up agreeing because he knows his son's going into war no matter what, and he'd rather be there to take on the battle, and if anyone's going to die, he'd rather it be himself. But that's also when Balkis finds out that Meowler was the reason his son went to prison in the first place. And Meowler is currently following Jenna to board Balkis's airship. And he's like, you're not boarding my airship. He then cuts Meowler's head off. And I mean, cuts this motherfucker's head off in front of a crowd of people, including Zola, her child, and Rutrid, plus a bunch of Zola's friends. And at this time, we also found out that Rutrid is not Balkis's son, but rather Zola's son that Balkis's have been basically paying for this entire time. So since Gertrude was supposed to be the one who summoned the Guardian in the first game, who summoned it in the second? Let's talk about it. In the first game, the person that everyone pretty much gets attacked by is Gertrude and her magic flute. But since she was taken by a preemptive attack that she did on the capital and her magic flute was locked up, who ended up attacking and summoning the Guardians? It was Hertrauda, and Hertrauda is Gertrude's sister. Pretty much she has the same magic flute, just summons different Guardians. Her Guardians are known as the Air and Sea Guardians. But she has to pay a big price for summoning these Guardians and letting them do what she commands. Basically, if they go through, whether the Guardians live or die, she gives up her entire fucking life. And this sends Gertrude into a spiral. Because Gillette pretty much says that he was using these people. He was using Hertrauda and Gertrude to exact his revenge on the capital and not what actually should have happened with them. So when does Leon actually find out that Marie is his sister? Let's talk about it. So the entire time, Leon already knew she was a reincarnation. But he finds out right before the battle with the principalities is that Marie is his sister. Pretty much after being taken in for being a false saint, basically she claimed on the ship that she was a false saint and she was only using the saint powers to get ahead in life when they were first going up against the principalities. The saint's power is supposed to be able to pretty much manipulate people. She gets taken into custody, the temple is trying to execute her, and basically the Prince's Brigade are trying to protect her. So she's stuck up in a room and Leon's asking for her help because the Saint's power are supposed to be what stops the principality. That's when she pretty much wakes up from a small nap that she had and they start arguing back and forth, and that's when it just pretty much slips from both of them that they're related. Marie has this overjoyed, kind of happy feeling because she's been wanting to see her older brother for so long. And Leon's just pissed, bro. Fucking pissed. So what was the kingdom's response to Marquise Frampton trying to frame Leon? Let's go ahead and talk about it. After the principalities pretty much starts attacking people, Leon goes in there and says, we must fight against them. And no matter what you do, we have to stand our ground. We have to stand 10 toes down. Marquise Frampton and a bunch of his subordinates pretty much say, nah, we shouldn't do that. And then the king and the queen are like, whoa, why shouldn't we do that, Frampton? This is when Leon pretty much gets to go over there and monologue to Frampton. He's like, oh, is it because you tried to sell me out? Is it because you tried to do this? Is it because you tried to do that? Marquise basically says that all the things that Leon has said is hearsay. That's when Luxion comes in with a recording of Marquise Frampton pretty much agreeing to let Gertrude have the border regions, pretty much agreeing to let her have this lost item. The Marquis then pretty much tries to go, oh, well, that's bullshit. And then Leon drops a shit ton of letters from the Marquise's room on the desk and says, well, if that's magic and what I'm saying is bullshit, then the letters that you accused me of, why are they in your handwriting with your signature on them? And then this is when the Marquis starts stumbling because everyone knows his signature. And they're like, oh yeah, well, that is his signature. So he's like, this is bullshit. It's already forgery. Leon pulls out a pistol and shoves it in the Marquis's mouth as the king and queen pretty much say, Frampton, stop with the excuses. We know what you've done. But here's your punishment. You and all the people within your faction are going to fight the front lines. If you die, you die. If you don't, you're going to jail anyways. And this is when Leon pretty much kicks him in the stomach right before saying, I'm so tired of nobles like you, and pulls the gun out of his mouth. So in Trapped in a Dating Sim, there's an alternate reality in which Leon actually marries Marie. Basically, it's called Trapped in a Dating Sim. Atome Games is tough for us too. And this route is known as the Marie route, basically because Leon ends up marrying Marie instead of Angie and Olivia. During this route, Leon and Marie never find out that they are related, and they never go deep into it. And from what is being said is that they end up trashing each other while confessing that the other person had a shitty fucking older brother or younger sister. If you have read all of Trapped in a Dating Sim, I would definitely tell you to check out the spinoff. But for people who haven't read this and understand that Leon and Marie end up getting married in this, how do you feel about this? Because me personally, I hate Marie. So this route really just kind of, it's not good to me. But what do you feel? Do you think it's a good route or do you think it's a bad route? People who don't know, Trapped in a Dating Sim is getting a season 2 in winter of 2026. Let's talk about it. As of January of this year, they released the new visual trailer for the upcoming season. And from what we see in the season, it is going to continue off where they left off. Where they left off was in the middle of Volume 2. First couple episodes are all going to have to do with the Elven Ruins. I've made videos on this. If you want to go see exactly what's happening in the Elven Ruins, you can. After that, we are going to be dealing with the politics of Marcus Frampton pretty much trying to lock up Leon and take over his lost item. And then we will be getting into the whole Fort Kingdom versus the Principalities in a full-blown war. This is going to take probably a couple episodes because there's a lot that's going to go on, and especially where you meet Hertrauda, you see Vandal's new discovery, and so many other things. This is going to be a pretty lit season, to be honest. So did y'all know that Leon believes in the power of friendship? Let's talk about it. After the Principality ended up pretty much losing their first full frontal assault when they were attacking the kids on the airship who were going on a school trip, they end up losing their airships and armor. What does Leon do? In classic Leon fashion, he pretty much makes a contract with a bunch of lower nobility to get them an airship that is pretty much worthy of being called an airship. Because either lower nobility does not have an airship or they have a shitty airship. But he does it under one condition. The only people who can work or repair their vessels is Leon. Due to Luxion's upgrade on all of their airships, pretty much no one can go anywhere else because they don't know how to fix the technology on the airships. So he pretty much forces them into a corner to help with the Principality War when they are summoning the Air and Sea Guardian. Because unlike higher nobility, feudal lords can pretty much just abandon their loyalty to the kingdom and nothing really comes from it, except if the kingdom wins the war, they no longer get their title back. But since all these people like Raymond are not able to get their ships repaired anywhere else, they end up agreeing to help Leon in the war. So the war on Whole Fort Kingdom cost Hertrauda her life before the war even started. Want to know how? Let's talk about it. So the conditions to use the magic flute is pretty much you have to amplify it with magic. But if you want to summon one of the guardians, the land, air, sea guardian, you have to give up a piece of yourself. You have to give up your life. After receiving the lost item from Hertrude, Hertrauda pretty much was like, yeah, we have to go get my sister now. And she pretty much went an all-frontal assault on Whole Fort Kingdom. And she's pretty much winning at this point. There's nothing that can stop her. And she's going to end up losing her life, but her sister is going to be safe. Well, no one can stop her until they introduce the hero of Holfort, Leon Bartfort, or Viscount Bartfort, who was not only able to wave off most of their attacking forces, but was able to show them that they are now losing the battle since him and his friends ended up getting on the battlefield. So in the war between Holfort Kingdom and the Principalities, Luxion ended up losing the most. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Since the Principality ended up launching their attack and using both the Air and Sea Guardian, Luxion was tasked with pretty much taking over the attacks on the Sea Guardian. Now, of course, Luxion doesn't use his main body in the attack of the Sea Guardian. What he does instead is that he holds it off with the Partner. The Partner is the airship that is pretty much a lost item, but it's just a airship that Luxion ended up building on Leon's island. The airship pretty much is supposed to be what they considered the lost item that Leon found. During the battle with the Sea Guardian, Luxion ends up losing the Partner because the Partner can no longer take damage, but the Sea Guardian ends up going down, so Luxion ends up both losing the Partner and losing arrogance, but we'll talk about that later. So what makes Olivia the superior saint to Marie? Well, let's talk about it. So while I call Marie the false saint, she is a saint because the saint artifacts did recognize her as the saint. The problem is she relies on the saint's powers to pretty much do everything that she needs to be done. And if the saint's powers aren't enough, then that pretty much stops her where she is. But with Olivia, it's a different story because Olivia doesn't rely on the saint's powers as much as the saint's powers will rely on Olivia. She doesn't get a power boost from the saint's powers. She is able to boost the powers of the saint's powers, causing a enormous power gap between her and Marie. Because Olivia already has those powers inside of her, so she's only making it stronger by having a medium to push her own powers out. Because her will is already designed to pretty much push people in the right direction. And she's able to already shield people on a mass scale, as we saw when the Principalities ended up attacking the students. She was able to shield the entire ship without having to use an artifact or a relic to enhance her powers. And Marie was not even able to shield a small ship with the Saint's powers and an artifact and a relic and boosting her powers. So how important is the Vice to the war and why can Marie not use it? Let's go ahead and talk about it. So the Vice is pretty much the secret weapon that ends up stopping the war within the game. It was built with ancient technology that pretty much only allowed people to get on it if they truly loved each other. The main reason that Marie would not be able to operate it is because she's a manipulator who never actually went and caught feelings for any of the people that she was around. On top of that, the Vice is said to enhance the powers of the Saint. And since Marie doesn't have the same powers that Olivia has, they wouldn't be enhancing the Saint's wishes and desires as much as if it was Olivia. Which puts them in this precarious situation where they have to try to find a way to put the Vice on the field so that they're able to hit the psychic attack so that everyone wants to stop warding with each other. Which is a big relief when Angie and Olivia are able to operate the Vice, because then you still have the protagonist who is needed to be there on the battlefield to stop it, along with the ship that is the secret weapon. If it was Marie, they would not have ended the war as smoothly as it did with Olivia on the Vice. The Black Knight, known as Vandal, was probably one of the most dedicated members of the Republic. So let's go ahead and talk about it. He ended up rescuing Gertrude from Holfort Castle, invading it, knocking everyone out, and then escaping from Holfort Castle. He then was the one who ended up taking out the Vice because of the lost item that he is currently wearing. He doesn't get the same psychic attack that everyone else ended up getting. He was the last one to remain fighting after the war was done and pretty much everyone else was surrendering or throwing a white flag. He was also the only person who was continuing trying to get revenge for Gertrude. And during the time that he's on the battlefield fighting Leon, Angie and Olivia pretty much gave this big thought out speech of what Gertrude should be doing, what she should be thinking of, and how she should be feeling. And how everything is sunshine and rainbows and you shouldn't hurt people because you ended up having a dead sibling at the cost of a war that you started. This is when Marie tells them to absolutely shut the fuck up, because they don't know what it's like to lose a sibling, so they could never imagine the pain that Gertrude is going through. And for Gertrude to go and get revenge is not something that Marie wants, but Marie understands. So if she feels that the need to go and get revenge, then she has to go get revenge. That other people don't get to dictate her feelings and her idea of mourning. This is when Gertrude pretty much says, yeah, you're right, we give up. And then Vandal busts in that door and says, okay, well, what we're going to do now is get away from the princess. I don't want you near her, He's still fighting, still trying to fight. And Gertrude's like, give up. Give up, Vandal. We have lost. So what was the job for Marie and the 5 love interests? Let's go ahead and talk about it. Marie was originally supposed to get on the partner before Luxion, and Leon ends up having to fight the Sea Guardian. So instead, they end up putting Marie in a specialized position. They put her and the 5 love interests as bodyguards for the Vice. Basically, their job is to protect Olivia and Angie at all costs. But Prince Julius is not supposed to be in the war. Prince Julius never got an okay from his mother, his father, or any members of the military to get into an armor and join the war. So instead, Julius ends up taking on this character, kind of a masked hero of sorts, which everyone with a brain knew it was Julius. Anyone without a brain didn't know it was Julius. And Leon remembers this masked individual from the game. Pretty much he ended up joining the final battle. He was incredibly strong and liked to strike very weird poses all the time. But the original person who piloted that armor was not Julius, but Julius's father, King Roland. So let's actually talk about the war between the principalities and Holfort Kingdom and how Leon ended up swaying the sides to make Holfort win. Because of the land and sea guardians, pretty much everyone within Holfort's nobility was either fleeing or joining the battlefield, and most people with a brain was fleeing. So to start Leon's introduction into the war, people think that Leon was against killing people, so they started invading the capital trying to get Gertrude back. But Leon immediately shot a motherfucker right through his armor, blowing him up and pretty much killing him. Which Leon admits he never said that he wouldn't kill anybody. He just said if there's not a need for killing, he's going to avoid it. That's when he starts piloting Arrogance, and him and Arrogance pretty much go into the battlefield and start knocking out airship after armor after airship after armor after airship after armor. This is when Luxion then ends up taking the partner to go and fight the Sea Guardian to pretty much keep the Sea Guardian at bay. And during this time, Luxion has to cut off communications between him and Leon because he is not able to communicate and fight at the same time because they were already jamming communication signals. And pretty much Luxion and Leon were buying time for Angie and Olivia to pilot the Vice to take out the Air Guardian. What is the real history between the Principality and Holfort Kingdom? Let's go ahead and talk about it. When the Principalities was still considered Thanos' house, pretty much what happened is Thanos' house wanted to expand their region, and at the time, other regional lords could go and attack other regional lords to expand their region. Thanos' house ended up attacking a shit ton of people trying to get suspension stones, and eventually led an attack on the capital, which pretty much failed for them. But Thanos' house didn't want to face the punishment of their crimes, so they succeeded the kingdom and lived on the outside region, which is why they ended up placing feudal lords on the region outside of the principality. So if one day that the principality ends up attacking again, Holfort Kingdom can hold them off again. So this whole thing was because Thanos' house wanted to extend their political power within Holfort Kingdom and eventually take it over. They fed their people propaganda that the whole entire time they were being hunted by Holfort Kingdom, they were being discriminated against in Holfort Kingdom, and all these other things, so that the people or the principality would hate Holfort Kingdom. So how did the idiots fuck up after the Holfort War where they could have been considered heroes? Let's talk about it. So after the war, the temple ended up coming to collect Marie because she is still technically a prisoner to the temple. And all 5 idiots end up trying to attack the temple guards. Julius is also in trouble because he ended up stealing armor and stuff from nobility. So now they're in some serious deep water because the temple is calling for their execution along with many other people within the noble ranks. Their family has also disinherited them again because everyone that Leon ended up getting re-inherited just got disinherited for this action. Marie was actually the logical one in this situation who tried to tell them not to do anything and just let her go, because in this situation it's better for her to go and face the punishment than for them to actually get involved. But no, they all ended up going to prison because of this, and it's all those 5 idiots' fault. So how did Leon save the 5 idiots from public execution? Let's talk about it. So after the 5 idiots ended up attacking the temple, they were sent to jail. We already discussed this in the previous video. Watch the video before that to get into that information. So Leon pretty much goes and tries to appeal to the court. This includes Duke Redgrave, the king, and all these other people, and tries to find a way to pretty much save their lives, including Marie. Duke Redgrave pretty much says, yeah, we can spare them, but you have to give up all your property, all your money, all your power. If you surrender all your court titles, your land, and allow them to live there, then yeah, we can save them and they will be perfectly fine. They will live out on your island because if they live in the capital, they're fucking dead. Leon thinks that this is a brilliant idea because it gets away from his noble responsibilities, his court responsibilities, and he no longer has a title of a feudal lord. So he's like, fuck yes, let's do it, I agree. And it pretty much ends there. Or does it? So did y'all know that the Otome game that Marie and Leon are trapped in is not a 1-game series, but instead a 3-part series? Let's talk about it. So as everyone knows, Marie and Leon are trapped in an Otome game, but Leon never lived to see the sequels of that game. Marie did. So she basically explains the sequels to Leon because he never heard of Hertralda. Hertralda is the villain of the 3rd game. And the air and sea boss are the big bad. The land guardian is the big bad from the 1st game. But where does the 2nd game take place? The Alzer Republic. Basically, during the 2nd game, you were playing as a completely different character away from Olivia and the main protagonist that we know, and you're in the Alzer Republic trying to stop them from pretty much ending the world there. Marie explains everything that she knows about the upcoming sequels, and then explains to Leon that these are the things that are going to happen. Which continues to piss Leon off because now he's stopped 2 world-ending events. There's 1 left, and it's in the Alzer Republic, which means he has to go study abroad. Now this was foreshadowed in Volume 2 when Leon goes and looks at a poster on the wall, pretty much saying study abroad, and they talk a little bit about the Alzer Republic, and Leon's like, I didn't think I would have to fucking go there, but yeah, he had to go to the Alzer Republic, which is where Volume 4 and 5 and I believe 6 takes place. So the King of Holfort Kingdom is a fucking slut. Let's talk about it. So, King Roland is known to having many mistresses. It's pretty common amongst the nobility. Except he doesn't just have mistresses. He has young mistresses. So young that before the award ceremony for everyone in the kingdom, he was hitting on Olivia. If it wasn't for Leon's interruption, he would have eventually ended up getting away with hitting on Olivia and taking her off to a private quarter. But because of Leon's intervention, it also ended up bringing intervention from the queen, who ended up scolding the king and making him have to regret his life decisions. Leon also noticed that Prince Julius has lots and lots of brothers and lots of siblings. But Malene has only produced the child of 1, Prince Julius. Meaning that this man right here has been pretty much spreading his seed, and that's exactly his excuse. I'm royalty. I'm supposed to have many heirs just in case something happens. Queen Malene didn't like that excuse though. So he's like, fuck yes, let's do it, I agree. And it pretty much ends there. Or does it? Oh no, it doesn't end there, but let's talk about it, right? Bottoms up. As Leon and everyone else who was involved in the Holfort War goes to receive their rewards and their appreciations and their new titles, the king walks up over to Leon and gives him a special title, a special reward. Now remember, Leon doesn't want to climb the social status. He does not want power or authority. But allow me to introduce you to Earl Bartfort of lower court ranking number 3. Basically the highest title that you could have besides being an actual member of the royal family. On top of that, Duke Redcliffe pretty much promised Angie and Olivia to Leon to be married. And he has an engagement ceremony several days after this event. But why does the king promote Leon so well? Well, of course, you can't demote someone during their prize ceremonies and all of that. But he was never going to demote Leon because he knows that Leon doesn't want power. Leon wants to be left alone. He wants to be able to live on the countryside and not have anything to worry about, not have to deal with more power, more responsibilities. He wanted an easy life, and the king was like, nah, fuck that dude. He's getting all the responsibilities because of all the pain he caused me. And the fact that he flirts with my wife and beats up my son, yeah, fuck that dude. Needless to say that the king and Leon are now beefing. So when going to study abroad, Leon is forced to take the 5 idiots and Marie. Let's talk about it. So after the whole Fort War, Leon goes to study abroad, and there's a bunch of things going on with the 5 idiots and Marie. Basically, the entire kingdom is calling for their execution. So they end up loading up the 5 idiots and Marie onto Leon's new airship called the Einhorn. With this, he is tasked in protecting them. Of course, Leon's not about that, and he pretty much tells the 5 idiots that to be on his ship, they have to contribute, and to contribute, they have to clean the ship during their travels. He's going to compensate them with a set amount of money, which they see as lowly and pretty much insulting. But Marie and Carla end up getting straight to work. They're like, fuck yeah, that money seems pretty good. The entire time, the 5 idiots are just pretty much complaining and trying to challenge Leon to a fight every single time he makes a move. If he walks by them, they're challenging him to a fight, and this is pretty much going on until they reach the Alza Republic, in which the 5 idiots and Marie end up getting this huge mansion set up by the embassy, and Leon kind of gets a quarters to himself on the outskirts of the town. Of course, Leon doesn't mind this because he has Luxian that can help him with any of his daily needs. And the 5 idiots are trying to find a way to not do anything and get servants into the estate. So Marie fucked up again. When telling Leon about the other games, she ends up telling him about the Alza Republic and having to go and study abroad. She ended up explaining everything about the game, but she forgot what the protagonist's name was. She could tell you what they looked like, but she forgot the name. Let's talk about it. So after traveling from Holfort to the Alza Republic and being harassed by the Alza Republic guards, Leon starts looking for the protag because Marie forgot her name. She described the protag as a pink-haired girl with dual ponytails and an outgoing personality. The problem is there are only 2 people that fit that description, and they're twins, Noelle and Lilia, causing Leon to now have to move on his own and figure out which one is the twin that is supposed to inherit the priest crest from the sacred tree and save the world from their final moments. He sets Luxian to find that out while also being in Noelle's class and trying to get close to Noelle. Of course, this journey is going to be incredibly hard for him because he has to figure out without telling anyone that he's in an Otome game and make it seem like he's fucking crazy. What happens when your audience for your game doesn't like your protag? Well, you set it in a different environment with different rules and start a new kind of game, but based off of your old one. Let's talk about it. Entrapped in a dating sim, we end up going to the Alza Republic. The Alza Republic is considered part 2 of the Otome games that Leon and his sister has been pretty much drafted into. This area revolves around a different set of rules. There are 6 families, all granted power by the sacred tree and a crest on their hand. The Alza Republic is known for being an undefeated kingdom that pretty much can take any attack on its nation because of the protection of the sacred tree. In this game, we get a new protagonist, which is Noelle. We get new love interest, and we get new villains. And Leon, after being engaged to Angie and Olivia, now has to go to the Alza Republic to make sure that the world that he is living in is safe because that game mode is now about to start activating, leaving Angie and Olivia in the capital to go study abroad. Would you want to show a bunch of rich, noble kids around your school? No? Well, that's what John and Noelle has to do. Let's talk about it. So when Leon ends up getting to the Alzer Republic, he is having to be pretty much guided around by Noelle and John. They pretty much tell him the ins and outs, do a little small things, nothing too big, nothing too fancy. They also show around Brad, Marie, Chris, Julius, all of them. Originally, Noelle thought this was going to be a problem because she thought she was going to be dealing with a bunch of rich, spoiled kids. Well, she technically is, but the fact that she's mainly dealing with Leon throughout the entire situation, she feels a little more relaxed because she feels like she can be a more relaxed person because he doesn't give off this air of nobility to him, even though he is a big noble. She also feels bad for Leon because when everyone ends up getting to the Alzer Republic, all the 5 idiots end up getting pretty much flocked by women because they're beautiful men, apparently. And Leon doesn't so much as get a glance from another woman. So how do you think that Brad is faring in the Alzer Republic? Good? Bad? Medium? Let's talk about it. Brad is thriving in the Alzer Republic. At his desk at all times throughout the school days, whenever they're not actually learning, there are women surrounding him. They pretty much treat Brad how Brad treats Marie, like a king. Now, of course, this isn't a really good idea, especially since there are other men in this place who probably have their eye on some women, and usually draw the bad attention. So, because of Brad's popularity, one of his guides by the name of Jean ends up getting beat up by one of the 6 noble housemen. His name is Pierre Fevel. This guy, right here. Pierre is known to be a delinquent who hangs around sky pirates, shady business dealers, pretty much the worst of the worst people in this world. And he has divine protection from the sacred tree, so that makes him even more dangerous. So after jumping John, Pierre ends up jumping Brad. And Brad pretty much holds his own for a good ass moment, absolutely destroying Pierre and his groups. Like, their magic skills was ass, and their combat skills, atrocious. Brad beat them in hand-to-hand combat. This dude is known for magic and sucks with a sword. So after having to deal with all that, Pierre calls upon his one trump card. His sacred seal from the sacred tree. Cancels out Brad's magic, gets him tossed upside down, and starts beating the ever-loving shit out of him. He then takes Brad all the way back to Marie and the other 4 idiots and pretty much plops him down on the doorstep, rings the bell, and pretty much everyone answers it shocked that Brad is on the doorstep, beat up, bruises on his face, teeth missing. And Pierre's like, don't nobody move or I'll kill him. How would you feel if you look like someone's dead brother? Let's talk about it. So meet Louise. Louise Ralt. She is the main antagonist of the second game. Her father, Alberg Rout, was the reason that Noelle's family ended up in ruin. He ended up attacking the Lesbianage family, destroying it, making it into ashes. From there, Louise Rout is now pretty much the antagonist of the second game. She's supposed to be a pretty bad person, picks on Noelle, makes sure she doesn't get involved in any of the love interests, so forth, so on, blah, blah, blah. One day when she goes to try to pick on Noelle, she ends up noticing someone. She notices Leon and her eyes immediately shoot wide because she had a brother with black eyes, black hair named Leon. But her brother ended up dying at a very young age. So Louise and her family are pretty much still mourning their child's death, which is why Alborg ends up adopting a son by the name of Serge. Serge is considered kind of a wild child who wants to be an adventurer. But nonetheless, when Louise ends up seeing Leon, she wants to get closer to him. She even tries to get him to go into a car with her, which he agrees to, and she says to call her Big Sis because she misses her brother that much. So where was Leon when Brad was getting beat up? Let's go ahead and talk about it. Leon took John to the hospital and then found out that he had an elderly sick dog named Noelle. Yes, like the protagonist of the second game, Noelle. At this time, Leon wants to get revenge on Pierre, but he doesn't want to interfere with the second game storyline. So instead of going after Pierre, he agrees to pretty much take care of Noelle, John's old dog. Noelle then shows up in the hospital pretty much looking after John too, and then asks what is going to happen to his dog, and Leon's like, you know what, I'll take care of it, it's fine, no problem. So Leon then goes, picks up the old girl, lets her live her good life, takes her for a walk, starts feeding her, does all the things that a good human being would do, especially when the owner of an elderly dog is in the hospital. Lucian even prepares special dog food to pretty much help with Noelle's nutrients and make sure that she's getting all the nutrients she needs from the dog food. After pretty much leaving Noelle and going and checking on the 5 idiots because he heard that Brad got jumped, that's when Leon ends up finding out that the Ironheart was taken by Pierre, and he's incredibly pissed at everyone involved. Beat up, or bruises on his face, teeth missing. And Pierre's like, don't nobody move or I'll kill him. So now that Pierre is on the doorstep of the 5 idiots, let's talk about it. He challenges them. He challenges them for the Ironheart, Leon ship. But he has Brad as a hostage and pretty much says that he'll kill Brad if they don't accept his challenge. This is when Marie starts to remember something from the game, something very important, and tells Julius, do not accept that challenge, you can't. And then everyone's like, but if we don't accept it, Brad's gonna die. So Julius accepts Pierre's challenge, and Pierre's challenge pretty much is for all of them to pretty much kill each other, and the last one standing wins. Of course, no one in there is going to do that, especially since it's Marie, Brad, Julius, Greg, Chris, and all of them, and Jill. All of them have to fight against each other. Any vow made on the sacred tree is an absolute. And when Pierre uses his ability from the sacred tree, it is an absolute ability. So collars start wrapping around Jill, Greg, Brad, Chris, Julius, Marie's, and Carla's throat. Pretty much signifying if they try to get the Einhorn back by force, the sacred tree will go after them. After the war in Holfort, an interesting shift starts to happen. A power balance starts going into effect. How does Jenna deal with this power balance? Let's talk about it. So after the Holfort War, the matriarchy starts to fade away, and more people start to rely more on the men, and the men involved are now able to start getting more and more popular and more famous, and they are now able to kind of pick and choose their partners. Now, of course, for someone like Jenna, this is a bad idea because she's so used to being a bratty, kind of controlling, she can do what she wants with men's money person, that it doesn't fit her for the men to be in power, making it harder for Jenna to find a partner, especially since the whole idea is to marry her off. I mean, it gets so bad that Balkis might do an arranged marriage with one of his knights just to marry Jenna off so she can have a happy life. Also, for the people who like seeing the Mango Loco in the video, next week I will probably be on a cruise. So if I am posting videos, they don't have Mango Locos. All they have is Red Bull and specialty coffees. So you may see a different can in this video. How do you think the 5 idiots fared outside of Holfort? Let's talk about it. So the 5 idiots were absolutely useless without their trust fund. Because they are so used to servants pretty much doing everything for them, they didn't have their academy uniforms ready, they didn't have food ready, they were rushing around all over on the first day. It was absolute chaos in their manner. And then they started overworking Kyle, the only servant in the building, to pretty much start helping them get ready for their first day at school. And for Marie and Carla, they felt bad for Kyle because of all the things that he had to go through. On top of that, Marie was incredibly pissed because she already warned the 5 idiots that they should have been ready the night before and to lay out their school uniforms because they don't have servants to do it for them. Shit, Brad wouldn't even leave the house unless his uniform was ironed, firmly pressed, and pretty much ready to look snazzy as fuck. Needless to say, the 5 idiots aren't doing very well outside of Holfort. So you want to know a mistake you do not make in Trapped in a Dating Sim? Let's talk about it. Allow me to introduce you to Aaron. Aaron is a commoner who also got a scholarship, the same way that Olivia did. Olivia is then tasked with pretty much walking through all the new scholarship students and introducing them to the Holfort Academy. Aaron and all his friends are like, you know what? She's pretty hot. I think we could get with her because she's not part of the nobility. So they end up inviting Olivia out to go drinking. The problem is, Olivia doesn't drink alcohol. She just sits there and sips on juice. She's pretty much like docile and trying not to make confrontation. This is when Aaron gets an idea, a great idea. We're going to roofie her. But that idea doesn't go that well. Clara, which is an AI from the Elven village, ends up overhearing what Aaron plans on doing and says, wait, hold up. Y'all shouldn't do that. She then ends up spraying them with some type of mist that knocks them out while Olivia's in the bathroom. Olivia comes back and is like, oh my God, what happened? And Clara is like, I think they just drank too much. And Olivia's like, we should get them back to their dorms. And Clara is like, yeah, we should, but you shouldn't. So Clara pretty much points Olivia to this group of like men. They're pretty much drinking, having a good time, and tells Olivia to go ask them to take those boys home since they live in the same dorm rooms. So these men agree to take them home, and that's when Aaron wakes up in a bed that's not his own, half naked with his clothes folded and his butt hurting. He looks over and notices that there's a stout, really built man. Like how they described it is that this man was chiseled from the fucking gods. That's how they described it. Aaron asked him about his butt hurting. Pretty much what the man said is that when he was carrying him home, he dropped Aaron on his butt. But it's heavily implied in that scene that there was more going on, and there was some penetration, to say lack of better terms. And this is when Aaron starts feeling strange. He starts like getting emotional and starts blushing. He starts having these emotions that normal men wouldn't have around other normal men. But really, it's just his adrenaline pumping. Clara is currently running an experiment on him. But after this, he starts caring more about his appearance, starts growing his hair out, starts wearing lip gloss, starts dressing a little bit more feminine. And that's when we got our first gender-bent character, Aaron. So Jenna is not an example of soft parenting at all. Jenna is an example of what society standards set. And when society shifts, they don't know how to change it. But let's talk about it. Jenna became in her teens before the shift between the matriarchy and the patriarchy ended up happening. So for Jenna, everything pretty much should go back to the way it was, where the women were in charge of finances, all this stuff, and could make the deals. The problem is the boys at the academy do not want to go back to that way. So they are pretty much barring anyone from the old styles of that like matriarchal system from coming in and actually introducing themselves. In fact, the boys of the academy have banned it so far that anyone who was originally in the academy during that time that treated men like absolute dog shit are not eligible for a partner. And until the new students come in, the men do not want to associate with the women of the academy. And this is hard for Jenna to understand because she is now having to go through maid training. She's having to go through like proper etiquette classes, ways to make her more feminine and more woman-like, such as cleaning houses, doing dishes, cooking food, all these simple tasks that she doesn't believe she has to do because she is a woman and the woman should have the say because that's how she was brought up. That's how she was raised. So throughout the years and years and years she's been alive, she's only known one system. And now that that system has been tossed, she doesn't know how to adapt to the new system. And that's her problem, is adaptation. In fact, growing up, Balkus was hard on Jenna. He didn't give her everything she wanted because it took Leon to get her a slave. It took Leon to get her nice clothes. It took Leon to do a lot of the things that she was trying to get Balkus to do. For people who don't understand the sacred tree, it's truly easy to understand how the sacred tree works. So let's talk about it. The sacred tree provides divine blessings. These divine blessings pretty much protect these people from outside interference or outside force. Usually given to members of these 6 great households. Used to be 7, but now is the 6th. Even the divine blessings themselves have an order of like strength. Because you have the guardian crest, which is considered the most powerful blessing you can get from the tree. The priest quest, which is the 2nd most powerful. Then you have all the members of the 6 royal families. The only person that can stop a crest bearer from pretty much entering into a contract with the sacred tree is another crest bearer. And once you enter this contract, that contract is set in stone. So whether you are offering up someone else's ship, someone else's livelihood, someone else's money, that's perfectly fine, because the only person that can stop it is another person who's been divinely blessed by the sacred tree. Trees do not see ownership, so they don't understand that Brad cannot give up Leon's ship because Leon is the owner. No, that is a construct of human minds, not nature minds, not a tree. So why would ownership that is made up in our world apply to a sacred tree when the contract is, if I win this duel, I get your ship? So what does Lucian do when he ends up joining Pierre? Let's talk about it. After joining up with Pierre, Lucian then allows Pierre to pilot Arrogance, pilot the ship. He allows pretty much everything to go whatever Pierre says. But Lucian starts learning more things. He starts learning about everything that Pierre's doing in the background. He learns about the sacred tree and all the things that come from it. He starts learning how the sacred tree works. He starts learning about the magical orbs involved with the sacred tree. But more importantly, he starts learning about the house squabbles within the Republic and starts gaining Pierre's trust and understanding that Pierre wants to be the head of House Feeble. And Pierre is kind of a shitty human being because he's trying to figure out what he can do next and what he can do to display his armor's power. And he says, well, if you want the kingdom to attack, you send them the head of the hero of Holfort. Because if anyone is going to cause them to take action, it's not going to be the disinherited prince or the disinherited heirs. It is going to be the person that they value the most. Right now, that is the hero of Holfort. And Pierre says, yes. I'll take his head, I'll take his women, and I'll fuck them right in front of him. What happens when Leon tries to go and get the Einhorn back from Pierre? Let's talk about it. So when Leon ends up showing up at the harbor, Pierre and all his sky pirates has pretty much graffitied the Einhorn. On top of that, there's a big crest from the sacred trees displaying that ownership now belongs to Pierre, and if Leon tries to get it back, he could end the Five Idiots' life along with trying to destroy the ship. Pierre then hops down from the ship and says, oh, you're the adventurer. You're the hero of Holfort. Oh, looky here. We got a big badass. And he basically says to Leon that you're not worth my time right now. I've already got your ship. I got your armor. I got everything included. So you can come back to me when you have something of value. Something of value. And then we can come back and discuss on a challenge. But until then, get the fuck out my sight because the ship is mine. And this is when Lucian turns on Leon. And he ends up joining Pierre because Pierre is the owner of the Einhorn. Are the second game's love interest better than the Five Idiots? Let's talk about it. The answer to that is absolutely fucking not. These motherfuckers are worse, in my opinion. Let's start with who is supposed to end up with the protagonist in the canon storyline. Loic. Loic is a member of the Six Great Families. He's one of the heirs. He's a crest bearer, blah, 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 blah. The problem is that Loic has a bad ending. And that bad ending basically amounts to the protagonist being an abuse victim. Another one of the love interests is Hugh. He is known as a womanizer who also will cheat on the protagonist and go after many different mistresses. On top of that, he's sloppily thrown together and doesn't have a shred of nobility inside of him. But if you get a close enough connection to Hugh, you can then go on the route of Fernando, which is kind of a better idea. He's more suave, but he's a turncoat. Then you have Serge, which is probably the best option of them all. He's the adopted child of the Ralt family, and on top of that, he only wants to be an adventurer. He doesn't really care about the nobility or the royal standings like everyone else, and he doesn't care about the six great houses. And for some reason, you have Professor Narcisse. He's a teacher in which you have to enroll in one of his classes to end up discovering his route. Incredibly creepy. But if all else fails and you can't end up collecting one route, you can always go with Easy Pick Emile. Emile is literally considered an easy pick because you can fuck up halfway through the game, then start with Emile and he'll still pick you. Dude's a simp. So what is Leon's plan to get Lucian and the Einhorn back? Let's talk about it. After using the Sacred Tree's divine blessing, Pierre now owns the Einhorn, and to get it back, he's told Leon that he has to give him something of value. So Leon recruits the help of Marie to figure out a good key item to pretty much help get the Einhorn back, and she recommends the sacred tree sapling and starts telling him of how to obtain it. First, he has to go and talk to Narcisse. Narcisse is one of the love interests and also a school teacher. Then he takes the 5 idiots on a dungeon tour to pretty much try and secure the sacred tree sapling. Once he has secured the sacred tree sapling, with this, he's then able to go back to Pierre and use it as bait. In the Republic, the sacred tree is one of the biggest things, and the sacred tree sapling is another way that resources can be spread about. But there's a lot of tricky things when it comes to the sacred tree sapling. One, if someone else gets it, they can take it to another country and plant it and then make their own sacred tree. Leon and Marie discussed this, so it allows them to understand exactly what weight they have over Pierre. So how does Leon figure out that Louise has a dead brother? Let's go ahead and talk about it. So after pretty much a lot of the things that have happened, and especially the loss of the Einhorn, Louise ends up inviting Leon over to her estate. That's where Leon ends up meeting Alberg Ralt. Alberg Ralt ends up getting shocked and kind of like surprised, but nothing out of the ordinary. They start eating dinner, and Leon really hates a vegetable. And when this vegetable is pretty much hated, apparently Louise's younger brother also hated that vegetable. And Louise's mother starts running away from the table crying because of the memory of her son hating that vegetable. That's when Alberg starts to tell Leon about his son and how he died randomly at the age of like 5, especially when Leon ended up getting his memories back at 5. Pretty coincidental, don't you think? And how it's been hard on the family, especially Louise and their mother, since the son was supposed to take over the estate. But this is also why Alberg ended up adopting Serge to take over the inheritance and take over the ship. Because apparently you need a big, strong man to run the estate and not the daughter. I don't understand it. He had a biological child. So what is going on with Noelle while all this things with Leon is happening? Let's go ahead and talk about it. This is while Loic is pretty much heavily obsessed with everything that's going on in Noelle's life. He's trying to be there. He's trying to like be her love interest. And there's so much going on. He has this collar that pretty much once you attach it to their neck, it will never, ever go away. So he corners Noelle at the academy and pretty much threatens to put the collar on and agrees to assist in Pierre taking out Leon so that he's no longer in the way. Leon finds out about this and then immediately starts rushing to Noelle's side. He ends up not being able to make it in time to stop Loic from putting the collar on. So he takes Lucian in a baseball-shaped form and completely chunks him at Loic, knocking Loic out and pretty much allowing Noelle and Leon to escape and allowing Noelle to start staying at Leon's place. This only infuriates Loic even more because he now feels that he's been betrayed not once but twice. So what is Leon's plans with Professor Narcisse after he ends up going and making contact with him? Let's talk about it. So the Professor Narcisse is pretty much part of the 6 great families. He's a Grans, and Grans have their own territory and their own dungeon leading into the sacred tree. Leon plans on exploiting that connection to pretty much allow him to get access to the sacred tree dungeon and have a guide into the sacred tree dungeon. And allowing the 5 idiots to help him along the way so that anything pretty much becomes too difficult, he has backup of actual powerful nobles. Now, of course, nothing goes awry and they pretty much make it to the sacred tree sapling in time, which Narcisse tries to take for himself. But Leon quickly puts that in a backpack along with an airship and then immediately extracts from the dungeon. This allows him to have a bargaining chip over the Republic because the sacred tree sapling is one of the most valuable things that you can actually obtain, especially since it revolves around the sacred tree. Their deity, their divine blessings, their everything that they need.